So today's meditation we're going to pick up from last week, but we are going to pick up on it in a context because Lou has just had this very interesting
I'm pretty sure I closed that door.
chat in the kitchen where we're talking about the state of the nation and the state of the world and how very despairing it can be. And one of the things that sort of hammered at me as he was saying it is that all of these people who are protesting are feeling good about being able to protest and to do their bit, but that the leaders are not going to be affected by this. That those leaders, in other words, the stupid people who are in charge, are still going to do as they please, and that we are set for the same kind of outcome in the end. The logical brain that looks at the world wants to say, yes, this is the way it works, that the people we have voted into those positions of power are going to abuse their power, that they are not going to let go of their hold on the power and the money and the titles and the status and the manipulations that keep them safe in order to let the people have what they want. The logical brain can do that. And I have to admit that when I am looking at South Africa as it is today, just today, there is a particular anguish. If you look at South Africa and you think of it as a person, and then it looks like a person who has been impacted by too much tragedy, as if just when we've recovered from one tragic thing happening, something else happens and something else happens, and we are weakened and vulnerable and in despair about it. And there is a particular anguish because so many of our animals are being affected by the fires that rage over Cape Town, usually, and now over Knysna. And when I feel it, I feel like we're broken. And the pain of it, the wounding of it is so great as a nation that if South Africa were a person, it would be lying there in pieces and we would have to work to put it back together again. And even as I see that and I feel that, I am inspired by it. I am inspired firstly that it is broken, because only when something is broken can we let the stuff out. Can we open it up? Can we see it in a better form? Can we actually think about it as being so many different possibilities rather than it being stuck in one way? The Japanese have this wonderful system where if something breaks, they repair it lovingly and they use gold to fill in the cracks in order to ensure that what was broken now becomes valued, priceless. That we remember that it has suffered this and that it has become anew, even been recreated from its brokenness. And as a nation, in any nation, there's no way, there's nowhere to go other than to heal your brokenness. And unfortunately, in terms of human minds and ego, we have to break before we heal. We have to break. We have to get to push comes to absolute goddamn fucking shove before we start to heal. So it feels like we've been battered with all of these things happening at once. But what we're being battered by and what we're seeing happening in the world right now is that there is an information overload of all the things that were hidden. And when we were meditating during all of those supermoons last year and the year before, we were talking about bringing the shadows to the fore, bringing the pus and the sore and the welts and the wounds and the pain all to the fore so that it can be exposed. We are in exposed mode now. We know that when we take photographs of something, when we take an instant, a moment, and we want to keep it forever, we have to expose it in order to hold on to it, to make more of it, even to turn it into a black and white picture or a transfer or an instant, to give it new color. So we have to expose it. And that's what we're doing right now in the world. So I am delighted that all sorts of shit is coming to the surface. And one of the nice things about shit is that regardless of how much of it there is, it floats. Once it's at the surface, it floats. You can't just get rid of it. You actually have to deal with it. The hard work comes in getting everybody to move outside of their poverty consciousness and outside of their apathy and outside of them thinking that this fire and niceness got nothing to do with them because they're cozy in their own little beds, out of that apathy and into knowing that what happens there happens to us. That is our biggest issue right now. And the context of it, in terms of the work we're doing in this center over the past 2 meditations, is that we've been flipping your chakras, turning them 180 degrees so that we can feel and we can know from a different perspective. Flipping the frequencies of that so that your own stuckness is shifted, so that we can wring out the old congestion and create space for the new. One of the things that we've been doing is spinning those chakras. And we know that the cogs of a wheel, when they are connected to each other, and they're always connected to each other, as the one turns, it moves, creating movement in others and others and others. If you look at the way the universe is created, all of the orbits around the sun impact on each other. I mean, these planets are not just sitting there in an orbit around the sun. They're sitting there in an orbit with each other. There are entire galaxies connected to each other, orbiting each other, and not going into big collision courses with each other. All because they are synchronized. They are spinning in random chaos and complete harmony. And we, created as we are in the image of all that is true and beautiful and magnificent in the universe, have the capacity to spin in exactly the same way, so that we are synchronized not just with the heavens and the earth, but within ourselves to self and with each other. So this work about flipping your chakras so that you move into a new perspective of self is part of the work of being a warrior, somebody who shifts the poverty consciousness of the planet and says, we're in this together. That house burning down is my bloody house. I mean, there is an old saying that, at first they came for the Christians and threw them to the lions, and we were entertained. People used to gather at the amphitheater to watch the lions make a meal of the Christians, right? Yeah. And then they came for the Jews and they put them in Auschwitz and we were entertained. Everywhere. They're always coming for someone. And it doesn't matter who they is. There's always going to be someone who decides that somebody else is less, or somebody else requires punishment, or somebody else requires teaching a lesson. There's always going to be somebody creating grand divides and bigger discriminations. But those people only get away with it if you're behaving like a bloody zombie. Those people only get away with it if you are willing to turn a blind eye. Those people only get away with it if you think that you're too small to make a difference in the world. And they only get away with it if you want your difference to be significant and out there right now. So for the people who fought for human rights over aeons of time, way before even this segment of human history is known, those people have triumphed. The people who died for those human rights have triumphed. They have not lived to live those human rights. They have not lived to benefit from them, but they have triumphed. And it is our job to honor that. It is our job to keep that alive and to be inspired by it. And maybe we won't live it fully either, but there's no problem with that, because really, which part of your life are you living fully if you are turning a blind eye to everything except yourself? So, whatever the outcome, it doesn't matter what the outcome is. What matters is what you put into the mass consciousness to shift it, to inspire it, to uplift it. The other day I was scrolling through Facebook and there was this thing about Haven Night Shelter in Cape Town. And they sell you a bed for 5 nights for 60 rand. And Paddy started stamping her hooves. Buy me a bed, Granny, buy me a bed. And Paddy loved her bed. I mean, she always had one in the meditation room. She had a bed just about anywhere we could put one for her. And of course, all the beds in the house were her bed. She was inordinately fond of her bed. And I looked at it and I thought, 60 rand for 5 nights. And what it does is that it gives somebody a roof over their head for 5 nights, especially in this freezing cold weather in Cape Town with the storm still coming. It gives them a meal at least once a day for 5 nights. And it gives them belonging for 5 nights only at a ridiculous cost of 60 rand. It took absolutely no work to do it. It was 5 minutes on the internet to give somebody 5 nights of belonging somewhere, of having somewhere to call home. I have spent 20 times that on a dog bed. I have spent 100 times that, or 1,000 times that, on beds in this house that nobody sleeps on every day. So we have to stop. And I know, one bed for 5 nights isn't a lot. It isn't a lot. By anybody's standards, it is a drop in the ocean. But this ocean is nothing more than a collection of drops. And for as long as you are keeping every possible drop in your own silly little bucket, your bucket isn't getting replenished, and neither is the ocean. So we actually have to empty our buckets out into the ocean. We have to empty all of it out. We have to give of ourselves, regardless of whether you think you're worthwhile or not. You might not know that what you're giving is worth something, but whatever it puts into the mass consciousness, it works. What you think of it is only your thinking. And however little or however big it is, it connects with everything else to make a difference. So when I look at the people in this country getting all apathetic and saying, oh, well, what is the point of me doing this because it's going to make no difference? I think you've determined an outcome without even trying. Because 10 voices is louder than 1, and 50 voices is louder than 10, and 1,000,000 voices is louder and louder and louder. And the fact is that we inspire others to join, to speak. To become involved. So we must be clear. What do we put into the mass consciousness? A preempted failure as an outcome that we cannot see for ourselves, or a vision, an understanding that works for everybody. It's not about you anymore. You're going to die. You're going to leave this body and go home. It's not about you. It's never been just about you. But each and every one of us has to grow up enough to accept that it's not about us. We have to grow up enough to take the responsibility that it is about everybody. And all of us in this group are old enough now. We're mature enough, spiritually, physically, emotionally, mentally, mature enough to be the more. So we must be careful what message we put out into the universe. We must be careful what message we speak to others. We can inspire everybody to belong. We can inspire everybody to share. We can inspire everybody to do one more little thing. No matter how far we are pushed, it's always that one more little thing that tips everything over, that flips us 180 degrees into a new way of being. The fact is, we don't know when that will happen in terms of the whole of human consciousness. But we do know that it can't happen unless we keep the flipping. Okay? Yeah. And I'm inspired because I know I am only one. I am only one of the masters working on this plane right now. Only one. And I might even be the least of those masters working on this plane. And I'm good at what I do. I'm really fabulous at what I do. When I send healing, it works. When I say that's not going to happen, it isn't happening. I know this. I can see it. It's taken me 15 years to be able to say it out loud. And as the least of the masters working with myself and others on this plane right now, do you honestly think that you will be left to be a spiritual warrior by yourself? And in fact, which universe do you live in on that leads its souls to slaughter? Do not equate the universe with the Trumps of the world. Do not equate the politics of the world with the politics of the universe. This is why we've been fighting for so many months about being soul first and foremost. There is no ego, energetically speaking. And what you're seeing in the world is egos fighting with each other. And we must speak out against those things. We must synchronize an entire ocean of consciousness to one voice, one sound that says no, but peacefully, not violently, peacefully, synchronistically. And we can say no loudly enough that everything flips, everything shifts. And for your information, it is flipping, it is shifting, it's doing it all the time. If you just read the news in this country, I mean, just a month ago, end of April, we were all in shock about cabinet reshuffles. And how quickly, between April and we're not even at the end of June yet. I mean, we're 6 weeks later. 6 weeks later, and we have got a pile of emails. How quickly the information has come to the fore. And suddenly you've got for 500,000 cables worth of information in other parts of the world. Yeah. I mean, what used to be a leak, yeah, WikiLeaks came into being. What used to be a leak is a damnable flood. Everything is unfolding. And yes, there might be consequences and there might be damage, but it's worth it. There's this massive movement happening. Don't undermine the people. We're all we've got. We are the people. There's no us and them anymore. It's all us. It's all us. And if you don't think it isn't you, then you're sitting in a little bubble somewhere in a prison of your own making. Because those people in Venezuela, and those people in the UK, and those people in India, and those people down under in Australia, and those people sitting in France saying, please come to France. I mean, God, those people as well. And those people in America, we're all saying the same thing in different languages. Only those people in Germany and the Netherlands are saying, this has got nothing to do with us because we're so comfortable and our prisons are empty. And why can they say that? Because they've been happily minding their own business and their own technology for years, while everybody else has been minding everybody else's business. But they're all on our side. There is a clamor from every country in the world right now, globally, saying the same thing. The detractors who want everybody else to be zombies will keep us there. They will try as far as possible. But I'm watching how this is shifting right here in our country. I'm watching Afrikaner people taking care of black people and black people standing up for Afrikaner people. I'm watching them talk about ISIS and Islam. I'm watching them, listening to them talk about subjects that would have been too uncomfortable for them to even say a word about in each other's space before. I'm listening to these people talk in a completely different way now than they did 12 years ago. And yes, there are always going to be the stupid people. But hey, stupidity is part of the human condition. It exists only when one has a body. Let's be very clear about this. Because the natural, innate way of being, energy, is intelligence. The universe operates on intelligence. Only in a physical body do we have an absence of that intelligence. And it is this intelligence that we are synchronizing you to when we say spin those chakras. So when the base chakra starts to spin, and that spin flows upward and it ignites the sacral chakra. So you have literally a circular flow that goes upward and kicks into the sacral chakra, joins its frequency, revitalizes it, and gets it moving, actually opening it up. And as those two flow, you'll get the next one opening up, and the next one, and the next one. And we are so blessed that it goes up and down, that this synchronicity works human self to divine self and divine self to human self in accordance with the laws of mutuality. All of the spiritual laws apply. There is not one single moment in which this intelligence is not at work. Keeping yourself synchronized to it is one way of staying on track with the truth, a truth. There's no such thing as an absolute truth, but the truth as it is the loudest right now for the whole of humanity just is. For me, it is the one way of staying completely and utterly synchronized to the infinite consciousness that I know as Shiv. That's all. That's what this work is. It's where it comes from. It comes from this infinite consciousness, and we are so blessed to have it in such simple and easy terms. And we have spent years preparing for it. Now is our time. Now is the time for humanity to shift everything so that the Kali Yuga is actually over. And whatever they call the golden age, for me it is the age of Shiv. It is the age of abundance. It is the age of enlightenment. It is the age in which the yogi of the Himalayas opens his hands and his third eye, and all is well. Don't ruin my vision with less. Don't undermine it by saying or doing or being anything that makes it less. And if you don't know how to do that, then take Bambi's mother's advice. What's not Bambi's mother? What's the little rabbit's name? His mother's advice. If you can't say anything nice, then don't say anything at all. And in that silence where you can't say anything nice, rethink what you are going to say so that whatever it is you are saying, it is uplifting and empowering. Because that's what we need the most of right now. Except for me. I am allowed to say, have you done it yet? Okay? Let us meditate.